This is Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists, brought to you by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America and webBikeWorld. Welcome to episode 137. I'm your host, Wes Fleming, and our guest this time is Jerry Deluca, producer of Motorcycle Wars. As of 2 weeks ago, Maine has experienced 28 deaths in motorcycle crashes in 2022. For those of you not familiar with U.S. geography, Maine is the northeasternmost state in the country, way out and up there nestled next to Canada. Now, on the western side is Alaska, which is norther, but not east. That's west. They have long, hard winters there, which understandably limits the months in which motorcycles are on the road. So most of their crash statistics for motorcycles take place between, say, late April and probably early November. 28 dead motorcyclists in a state with a population of 1.34 million might not sound like a lot, but according to Maine officials, that's the highest number of motorcycle-related fatalities in the state for 5 years. It's a 27% jump up from the 22 deaths in all of 2021. Now, 28 dead motorcyclists in a state with a population of 1.34 million might not sound like a lot, but according to Maine officials, that's the highest number of motorcycle-related fatalities in the state for 5 years. And it's a 27% jump from the 22 deaths they had in all of 2021. And it's indicative of a trend across all of the states. This is just based on a report I saw about Maine. Now, Maine's motorcycle safety program coordinator, a fellow called John Kohler, identified 4 pain points he says are causing the number of crashes and therefore fatalities to grow. He identified a lack of training, excessive speed, consumption of alcohol, and not wearing a helmet as these particular primary pain points. Speed featured in 60% of motorcycle crashes in the state, and nearly 70% of the motorcyclists who died weren't wearing a helmet. Kohler also identified an alarming trend in motorcycle-related injuries and deaths, at least alarming to me, and that is that motorcyclists are crashing more often due to using their cell phones while riding. Given the number of social media and forum posts I've seen from people wondering what the best way to mount their cell phone on their handlebars is, I don't doubt this observation, even if it's not a primary source of motorcycle crashes yet. Now, BMW Motorrad is apparently all in its commitment to superbikes. Only a couple of days ago, they announced some big changes to the 2023 S1000RR, information about which you can find on the website bmwownersnews.com. That's just a plug for me and my organization. And it looks like they're already adding to their M-Class motorcycle lineup with a single R version of the M1000. In BMW's naming schemes, this would classify the bike as a roadster. In other words, it's a naked version of the M1000RR. The MRR features 212 horsepower and a weight of just over 420 pounds. The single R version will likely have slightly less horsepower as they tune road bikes just a little differently than race bikes, even in the M class. The weight will probably be about the same, maybe a little less due to the lack of a full fairing. The M1000R will have a wheelbase 1 inch longer than the RR and sit about 2.5 inches higher. I would expect it in all other ways to be the same kind of upgrade from the source bike as the M1000RR is to the S1000RR, and with all the attendant upgraded technology to boot. Now, the 2022 M1000RR starts at $37,640, which is a $20,000 premium over a base model S1000RR. The way I look at it, we can probably expect the M1000R to start pricing at about $34,640, which is about 20 grand over the base price of the S1000R for 2023. Still no word on if or when an M-Class adventure bike from BMW might hit the dirt, but we'll keep an eye out for you.
Electricity, 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 electricity.
Back when Harley-Davidson split its LiveWire electric motorcycle off into a separate company, also somewhat confusingly at the time called LiveWire, many in the industry predicted it was the beginning of the end for Harley's EV program, seeing the move as a way to let the electric division die off in a slow, obscure way that wouldn't harm the orange and black's bottom line. Looks like those folks, and I will admit to partially at least being one of them, were wrong. Or at least they weren't all the way right, not yet anyway. LiveWire has become the first publicly traded electric motorcycle company in the USA, and trading in the stock appears to have gotten off to a robust start, with the IPO generating about $334 million in gross proceeds, according to Biz Journals. It's actually a joint venture between LiveWire and a special purpose acquisition company called AEA Bridges Impact, but that's stuff for people who understand these kinds of financial moves and not me. I don't know why the other company's involved, and I would have to talk to somebody who knows way more about it too, but they're involved. Harley CEO Jochen Zeitz said, and I quote, "This transaction represents a proud and exciting milestone for LiveWire towards its ambition to become the most desirable electric motorcycle brand in the world. We believe LiveWire is well positioned to define the two-wheel EV market, and we're excited about the future." End quote. Now, to follow right up on that positive bit of news for LiveWire, you can now get your deposit down on LiveWire's second mass-produced electric motorcycle, the S2 Del Mar. Your reservation is expected to result in a delivery time sometime during spring 2023. So maybe as soon as 4 to 6 months from now. The Del Mar is built on LiveWire's modular aero architecture, which of course LiveWire says will help position them as the most desirable maker of two-wheeled EVs on the market. The Del Mar is going to be available in 3 color schemes, gray, blue, and black, and your $100 deposit counts against the expected MSRP of $17,000. Visit the LiveWire website at livewire.com to find out more, and let me know if you put down a deposit on one of these bikes by emailing podcast@bmwmoa.org. Thanks to webBikeWorld for providing us a wide variety of industry news, and please be sure to check out their website at webBikeWorld.com for the latest motorcycle news and in-depth product reviews. Joining me on this episode of Chasing the Horizon is Jerry Deluca, producer of the Motorcycle Wars. Just Motorcycle Wars. And we'll get into that a little bit later, what that's all about. But first, Jerry, welcome to the show. It's good to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Wes. It's going to be very interesting chatting with you. I look forward to it. Yeah, I'm pumped. Good.
Yeah, and I detect a little bit of a different accent than I typically emit. So I'm curious where you're from geographically.
Okay, well, Toronto, Canada, born, raised here, had a great upbringing. My parents are from Europe, Italy to be specific. But yeah, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, spent most of my life here. I have traveled around a little bit. I love New York. But I grew up here.
So growing up in Toronto, how does somebody like you get into motorcycles?
Well, valid question, given that we have seasons here. The racing season or the motorcycling season isn't exactly that long. I guess if you're really into it, March, you're on the roads, and then you're probably off the roads sometime in October. I've seen some guys go crazy and ride during snow, but not often do you see that. So how I got into it, I was very young. I love anything mechanical, first off.
Okay.
I recall my dad took me to a Formula One race, and way back in 1972, they used to have pit bikes, just like they do today. And I just admired these two-wheeled rolling machines, and I just thought it was the most fun-looking toy that an adult could be sitting on and enjoying. And I said, I want one of those. Never got one until I was maybe 14. I got my first one that wasn't working. It was a Honda Mini Trail, 50cc. They're icons today.
Yeah,
I'm sure you're aware of that, right? So essentially, that was my first bike, a Honda Mini Trail, and I was about 13 or 14 years old. And I brought it into auto shop. So I was, of course, a little bit of a hands-on kind of guy, kind of a techie. And I repaired my first bike and got into it at about 13 or 14 after some time in the auto shop in high school. Just entering high school, that is. But yeah, ever since then, I just found motorcycles such an interesting thing from so many aspects, from the mechanical aspect to, of course, the riding. I started out most of my career dirt riding, motocross, and back trails where I grew up, just outside of Toronto. We had a lot of trails that maybe were legal, maybe weren't. I didn't ask. But I spent a lot of my time riding, but I spent 50% of the time maintaining the bikes. I used to buy and sell a lot of little dirt bikes. I have this crazy fetish of just taking a bike that's got a lot of grease and mud and broken parts, disassembling, cleaning everything up, and wanting it to look like showroom.
Yeah.
It's just something I'm sure you understand. If you're a techie, which is what I am, it's something that attracts me.
Yeah. Yeah. My descent into tech stuff usually comes from one of two areas, either not being able to afford to pay somebody to fix it or breaking it and having to fix it myself.
Yeah.
As a result. So I have I like to think I have a decent bit of technical knowledge when it comes to at least the motorcycles that I ride, but it's usually because I broke something or messed something up or couldn't afford to get it fixed by a real mechanic.
Yeah, but doesn't it give you confidence to know what you're riding after you've done the work on it?
Yeah.
It brings confidence to me. I seldom take my bikes out unless it's like a certification that you need. I usually do a lot of the repairs on the road bikes that I ride on the road myself, right? Brings a lot of joy, not only riding, just working on them. I do a lot of work for my friends. I've got, in my basement shop, I've got a couple of bikes from friends who know what I do, know my passion. They know they can get a good deal because I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I've got a 1980 MX-80. I don't know if you're familiar with that Yamaha.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it's a little two-stroke motorcycle, 1980. And he brought it over. I could love to show you some of the pictures that when he first brought it over in the back of his pickup, it was lying on the ground.
Oh.
Some parts missing from it. Anyway, I am halfway through the process of building it. Again, it's something I love to do still at my later years.
Yeah, and you have a nice long winter for projects.
Bingo, Wes. That's it. Yeah. I've got 3 on the go, getting ready for this winter.
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that where I live in Central Virginia, and I can more or less ride year round.
Wow.
If I can, as I get a little older, I'm discovering that I prefer to ride in the cold rather than the hot. So I tend to do more frivolous riding when it's cold and less frivolous riding in the dead of summer. And especially where I live, we get random thunderstorms in the summer, and it seems like no matter what I'm doing, I get caught in one and don't have rain gear. So I've gotten.
Are you concerned about tires when it's colder? What temperatures do you ride in when it's?
I will ride as long as there's no ice on the roads. If I get up in the morning and it's below freezing and it's going to stay below freezing all day, then I won't ride. But if it's going to be above freezing for the bulk of the day, I'll wait till the sun's good and up and let the commuters get off the roads, and then I'll venture out. I used to have a sidecar rig, and I would take that out in some pretty sketchy weather, but you can't beat that 2 two track stability.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's good stuff there. What kind of road bikes are you into these days? What do you take out on Saturday afternoon when the chores are done and all the production's done?
Yeah, in I guess it was 2012. 2010. I started. I had this crazy idea. eBay. I was surfing eBay for parts, right? And I go, oh my god,
never a good idea, Jerry.
So I found an R6 front end, complete, $800. I said, wow, that's pretty cool. I found a VFR 800, complete rear end. I go, wow, calipers there, pads are all in there, tires even installed. Yeah, I'll put a new tire on it, but it's there. And the sprocket was on it. And I said, wow, maybe I can do something with this stuff.
Yeah.
So in 2010, I started drawing out a plan to build a bike from scratch, including the frame. So that's my current daily rider. I have a power plant, 1974 Kawasaki Triple, the 500, the H1. So that's the power plant. I have an aluminum frame built around that. This is my prized possession. This is the bike of all bikes for me.
Yeah.
Because I built it from scratch. And it's street legal. And it looks like a Ducati 996. That's the bodywork that I custom fit to those expansion shavers, so that it would fit and look reasonable. And Wes, it won awards 2 years in a row, man.
Cool.
When I finally built it, I brought it to the biggest bike show here in Toronto, and I won. I forget the title, but it's entry level builders.
Gotcha.
Not pro builders, because I'm not a pro builder. But I built up quite a name. People know me in this little industry of ours in here in the Southern Ontario.
Yeah,
for building that H1.
It must be fun too to come back to it from somewhere and see a couple of other riders standing around trying to figure out what it is.
Oh my God, Wes, you don't know how many times I ran into that, right? I had one guy, I don't know if you've heard of Canada's Toronto Sky Dome. It's where the Blue Jays play.
Sure.
Okay, good. So I had parked my bike out front, went in for a coffee with a buddy. I come back outside and there's this guy standing next to the bike. He goes, I got here about an hour and a half ago and I wasn't going to leave until I heard this thing run. And he named all the parts. And that's few and far between. There's been a couple of guys that realize it's a Frankenstein kind of a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But it's a sharp looking bike. I'm pretty proud of it. And so that's my main rider. I do a lot of motocross.
Okay.
I have a YZ125 that I bought last August and stripped her down over the winter. That was last winter's project. Replaced all the bushings, bearings. Didn't need any engine work, which is great. And I got it riding this year. And I get out a couple of times a month. Haven't been out for a few weeks, but I intend to do some more riding. So that's...
I imagine that production on your television show takes up a lot of your time, and
yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit because, I'm a big fan of motorcycle racing. We have Moto America here, which is kind of it's the same bikes they use in World Superbike.
Yep.
So, and I've been a World Superbike fan for a decade or more.
Okay.
I love World Superbike and all of the attendant drama and personalities and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Because it's just it I don't know. There's something about it that just draws me in. Like some people might be into football or basketball or whatever. Mm-hmm. I follow who's on the teams and all that kind of stuff and enjoy it. It's been a lot of fun since BMW got back into it, since I'm such a big BMW fan. So it's been a lot more fun to follow. But one thing I've never really paid much attention to is local racing. I had an uncle that was a motocross racer when I was a kid, but that was adult stuff. So I didn't really pay attention beyond the cool. It was motorcycles. There wasn't, he seemed to always come home broken or bleeding, so it seemed a little dangerous. So I'm really curious how your kind of hands-on, technical background turned into producing what is effectively, you know, kind of a following a competition kind of concept through a season on a unscripted motorcycle television show.
Yeah. Okay, so you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the drama and perhaps maybe some of the politics behind the riders, their stories, right? So you're drawn. It sounds like you're drawn to the stories of these riders. Do you race, Wes? Have you raced yourself ever?
Oh no.
Okay, yeah, same here. I don't have it in me to race. I've gone to local racetracks since I was 60, since I could drive. I've been going out to tracks. If I can bring someone along with me, they go too.
Yeah.
So I've been around motorcycle events. And that's pretty important. Some of my background is operating some of these events, not motorcycle events, but in general some motorsport events like autocrosses and whatnot. So I know what's involved in the safety aspect and making sure things run to an itinerary, making sure that at the end of the day, you know, everything's packed up and neat. So I've got that background. I've got a fairly technical background, which I've already described, and also over the years, the music we were speaking about earlier, I've got an artistic background. I'm not great at any of them, really great, but I'm good. And what I've done is I took all those little skill sets and with confidence, a strange confidence, said, you know what, I'm gonna put an event together that I can film and have a lot of fun, make it safe, and make it great for the riders. So I'm just going to go to that H1 for a second. After that build, I met a lot of people in the racing industry and became friends with them. And one of them was he was a vintage racer, was a retired cameraman / director. So I had pitched him an idea for a television show. And it started at that point. And that was 2013 and a half.
So you've been working on this for a good long while.
Oh, yes, Wes. It's taken a long time because I'm not from the industry and I don't have a ton of money, but I have a passion for it. I had some money to put towards a pilot, which we produced. We produced the pilot in 2015. I learned how to edit for about a year. Right? Final Cut Pro, $500. And oh my God, if you've got the tenacity to stay at it and learn stuff, you know, that you like to do, you could do some pretty fun, fancy stuff. Like I presented my pilot to industry professionals and they asked, who did this? Right? And I said, I did. Right?
I did. Over here, just me.
Yeah. And they were impressed with the graphics and just the audio and the color. Now, I got a lot of help. You can't do anything without getting help at the scale of that I want to do. So I had cameramen who understood color balancing and sound people who understood sound. So when we shot our event, we pulled off a one-day event, and it was 12 riders who competed in a race designed by them. Right. I said, I gave them a theater, I called it. I said, let's come up with a way to get some interesting racing done where you don't lose the essence of what you're doing. Right. The danger's got to be there. It is when you're doing 200K on these machines. And so this is what we came up with. The racers go head to head. It's much like drag racing, but with corners. And it's a short race. Okay. So 3 short instant gratification for an audience. So you can pull off many races and you only have to watch 2 guys go around for 3 laps.
Right.
So you can imagine an elimination process. If you get the riders to speak to the audience, they start to either fall in love or fall in hate to whoever they think the heel is, right? So it's an amateur thing versus 6 amateurs will go against each other to come up with 1 champion amateur, and same thing for the pros. And how you define what's an amateur, and a pro is by experience.
Right.
So it's vetted through judges that are far more involved in racing than I am. So I leave that for them. So the amateurs against the pros, essentially is what's happening, because the contrast will be there because everything's timed. So you know what bikes these guys are using. They're all on the same tires. They're all on the same track. So you get a contrast. But at the very end, that's when the pro amateur, who's won some money, and the pro, who's also won some stuff, now to really take the prize home, there's a bonus feature. So they set up a race between the pro am and the pro. Sorry,
right.
The amateur and the pro. And so there's a negotiation that happens, right? So that's interesting for the audience. See, there's a little bit of television juice there, which is something that you have to do it if you want to gain an audience on a network. So there's that. You've seen a lot of these television shows where they make the competition a little bit more dramatic than it needs to be.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to stay away from that, because I don't want the racers to think that this thing is sensationalized and it's not authentic and sincere, because it has to be authentic and sincere. So what I've described to you thus far is just the event itself and the racing elimination. So that's all cool. But what keeps people coming back is story.
Yeah.
So this is what I've learned in the last year and a half. When I shot my first event, I did not, admittedly, plan to capture the stories. Right? We had a green room where guys went in after they would race and they would talk about the race, but they didn't talk about themselves. And that's the key thing, what I believe. And so far, everyone that is backing with me is backing me up. They understand that you got to tell a better story, a good story. And anybody, in my opinion, I've talked to lots of racers, a lot of pro level, national level racers here in Canada. There's a couple of contacts I have in California, but none thus far in World Superbike. But maybe you're my connection to that now.
I don't know anybody. I just love watching them. All
right. Okay. Well, nonetheless, you're still good with it. So, I learned in the last year and a half, Wes, you got to tell a really good story. So at the end of an event, it's a weekend event. By that time, there's 32 riders, all know who are the best storytellers, the guys who are the most passionate. When someone's passionate about something, it doesn't take that much to pull the story out of them. You can just let them go and they'll just talk, and it just comes out interesting listening to their challenges, right? What's so funny?
You just basically described you've blown the whole thing open on how why this podcast is as successful as it is because all I do is get cool people that do neat things in motorcycling, and I ask them leading questions and I let them talk.
Yeah, so that's great, Wes. I figured so much, right? Because you've got well over 150 episodes, I think, going.
Getting pretty close to it. I think your episode is going to be in the 130s.
Oh, okay, good, great. Anything I can do to help endorse what you're doing is just a great thing, because you're a motorcycle. The top Canadian motorcycle racer once told me, I interviewed him, he goes, I asked him what people are at this motorcycle show, right, at the International Center here in Toronto. And he said, the best people, motorcycle people.
Yeah.
Right? Motorcycle people, everybody that I've encountered, they're all so helpful and nice. Right? When it comes to racing, though, they're focused on winning and self-centered, right?
Well, winning is not personal.
That's right.
That's like in the business world, they say, business is not personal. You can be great friends off the track. You can even be great friends on the track. But once that green flag comes down, everybody's looking for the checkered flag, and that's all there is to it. Right. And if you win, great, your buddies celebrate it. And if they win, great, you celebrate their victories.
Bingo. Yeah. And so the racers, love the racers. You just described them very well. One of the things that I want to do, and I think it's because of where I come from. I used to love going to a racetrack, sitting alone, having a hot dog or some kind of a drink, and just watching these bikes go around.
Yeah.
And in Shannonville here in Toronto, there's a local track called the Shannonville Motorsport Raceway. The grandstands are right above the pit area, right the entrance lane and the exit lane. So I used to just hang out there and watch them do their work on their bikes. Usually they were alone, maybe had a buddy working with them.
Yeah.
But I want to bring an audience, people that are indifferent to motorcycle racing, people who normally, I mean, they know motorcycles, maybe they have one, but don't understand racing. I want to bring as many people, I want to attract as many people as I can to that. So I think that's a good goal to have, and that's what makes me have to write a good story and tell a good story. Make sure I capture the story. I was getting to how I would do that. At the end of an event, I was starting to tell you about this. You'll know the characters. There's 32. There's 32 riders. You'll know the characters really well. You'll know the passionate ones, and we'll find the ones that seem like they're out of this world. They're just so involved in what they do. And like you said, a couple of leading questions, and then, in the studio, you capture their story. They'll talk for an hour, and I'll choose those 6 odd people, and then go film them outside of that event. Yeah. I've got a mobile studio, a little trailer that's got a little green room. It's got a green screen in it. It's air conditioned.
Nice.
It gets pretty hot. So I'll just go to the local areas. I'll just drive around for a week, visit these 6 people in their home, maybe at their job site, get them in the little trailer and just set the camera up and shoot them.
Yeah.
And let them tell their story. And the idea is, when I'm editing, is to make the event the matrix, I guess, the element that they're sitting in, but the story will be dispersed throughout that event. If it's a 45-minute minus the commercials, 45-minute show, they'll be dispersed throughout that show, telling their story as the event goes on. So capture the event really good. The event's got to be nice and sharp and colorful. The theater's got to be pretty. The sound's got to be nice, right? Yeah. You get intimate with the machines for the techies like me and you, right? You can't lose the essence of the racing, right? So you'll have the GoPros, the drones capturing that stuff. One particular shot I love capturing is you get your drone guy to hover about 15 feet in the air in a turn, just start moving into the same direction that the bikes are going, and then speed up as you're following the bikes. It looks like a jib, a really cheap jib, but nonetheless, I guess jibs, the big arms with the cameras on them.
I was just going to ask. I have no idea what a jib is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So
back in the day, when they didn't have drones that are so well controlled, you can program them now, and you get 4K. Like high resolution. It's like amazing, right? And wide angles. So you just, as the guys are battling that corner, you can just follow them with the drone. And that's at 15 feet above the ground.
Nice.
That's all you need to make an exciting shot for someone who doesn't really understand racing, and they see these guys from up above going around. 2 of those drones on a short track, you cover the field really well. And And the one thing that has been my biggest problem in succeeding with this is I'm doing it alone. I didn't mention that.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get someone as committed as I am to join me with the ride and spread the workload. But I found 2 people that are willing to do it. And those are the people that you spoke to already, Emily and Matthew. I think you spoke to Emily.
Yeah.
She's the one that contacted you. They have no interest in motorcycles until they met me. So I convinced them.
Nice.
Yeah. I got Emily designing really cool posters right now with some of the riders. I took some pictures, and we have to make sure that we're all licensed and clean, right?
Right.
So we're using some of the images that I've already collected. She's making these really cool posters. I didn't know she was as good as she is in the media department. What they do is PR, like you had mentioned earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
So you, I want to ask some questions that I don't know that everybody would think of this stuff, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
Because I grew up kind of in the TV generation. So, you mentioned earlier, 45 minutes because you got to leave room for commercials. Yeah. I remember when, standard was 48 minutes, 52 minutes even.
Yeah.
So, obviously, maybe not obviously, it sounds like you're aiming for a kind of a traditional broadcast release. Is that accurate, or are you?
It's accurate. It's not, but it changes. You're so right. In the last 2 years, never mind 10, in the last 10 years, there's been a complete upside down change. It's actually at a point when I started this project, I was really concerned in my presentation to the big networks. Now, with so many streaming services, including YouTube, where you even with just self-distribution, if you have good social media, which now looks like I'm headed that way with my team, YouTube can attract brand partners. YouTube alone now is on my side. So this is another thing, Wes, that I'd love to talk about. Just a little bit anyway, I'll just introduce it. The people with this iMac 27 that I'm using right here, $500 software, you need skill. You have to know, you have to take some courses. You got to learn some master classes on how to edit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff, and I've just started scratching the surface. You can technically do it, but there's certain things that really make a difference. And those are the things you have to learn. I still am learning that stuff. Anybody with, some tenacity and some passion and hard work, they can pull off some really incredible stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like our presentation will be ready for people like Netflix and those types of broadcasting distribution networks, right? So yeah, the landscape in this industry has changed drastically. I know that broadcasters and the people with the big money in Canada, CBC and all those other companies, they're on YouTube looking for products, looking for properties.
Yeah.
Right? They're looking for ideas. So all we have to concern ourselves with really now, because I was concerned before about making the presentation and pitching it to those people. It's less of that, and it's just make sure you got a good story.
Yeah.
Make sure you edit right. Make sure you do it right, and test it. Ask people, what do you think of this, right? And if you polish up your presentation and you tell a good story, I can't say that enough. The story is everything. Human interest is what it's about. It's not about motorcycles. It's about the people who are passionate about something, whether it's sharpening knives or tattoos. Those people are all passionate people. So if I can lock into that, and it doesn't seem like in the industry, in the motorcycle racing industry, it doesn't seem like anyone's done what I want to do. And that's for racers to tell their passionate stories. Tell me your lifestyle, right? Tell me what's going on, like why you do what you do. And even at the grassroots level, some of the stories that these guys have, it's really something. They go out and they risk their lives. I know, sadly, people that have lost their lives doing weekend racing.
Yeah.
So there's something there. And I really I want more people to hear that story because it's interesting. And
it's really interesting. I have kind of watched the rise of YouTube. And it mirrors kind of what something that I was very involved in my kind of late 20s, early 30s as a guy who played in rock bands. Mm-hmm. With the advent of Pro Tools, which is music recording software.
Yep.
And, it was almost a democratization of the music industry to a certain extent, to where almost anybody could record an album that sounded as good as the stuff that you might hear on the radio.
Yep.
From a sonic perspective, from a technical perspective. Now the music might still suck, but you know, it sounds great. And I remember very clearly, you know, moving from a 4-track recorder to an 8-track to digital and then to an Apple and Pro Tools, and, you know, actually recording like a real honest to goodness album that I could slip into a pile and you wouldn't know that it was recorded in the room under my baby daughter's bedroom, you know, where we could only record for a few hours a night before bedtime kind of thing. Yeah. And it's really exciting for me to see the same thing happening in television and film because I've seen some really astounding independent productions that, you know, if you didn't know it wasn't Universal or MGM or whatever, you know, Paramount, I'm blanking on some of the TV
that's fine
equivalents. If nobody told you, hey, this is a grassroots, you know, shoestring budget production, because it looks as good as what you would see on network television or any of the major streaming services. Right. And then it comes down. So now it comes down to exactly what you're talking about, compelling storytelling. And that's where the key really is, because, you know, if you got somebody who's a Cooper or a cobbler or a motorcycle racer or you know, a government representative, it almost anymore doesn't matter what somebody does if their story is compelling, because that's what draws you in.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you become interested in what it is they're doing because they're involved with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that an interesting human phenomenon?
Yeah.
Not only the ability to story tell, but the interest we have. So that brings me to a point. I've been trying to learn how to tell a good story. Yeah. And there's one reference point that I really, really like. There's a guy on YouTube. He runs a channel. I don't know if I can say the channel name. I guess I can. Soft White Underbelly. Okay. His name is Mark Leta. He is a professional photographer. And in the 80s and 90s, he was the go-to photographer for IBM, for Apple, for all the major Silicon Valley computer companies. So Mark Leta, and he knows how to use light. Yeah, and he knows how to use cameras. Now he's never done any film, but I think it was a Canon camera. I don't remember the exact model, but these cameras are so amazing now. So he grabbed a camera, he started using it, and a few years ago he started capturing story. You must watch anytime I tell someone this, they are so interested. They come back and say, thanks for introducing me to this guy, right? The stories that this guy can capture, he's not telling any story. He sets the camera up, he asks a leading question. He always starts his questions off, where are you from? Where are your parents from? What's your story, right? Yeah. And it's everyone that's had a challenge in their life. The theme for his channel is he wants to expose the tragedy of human nature and how these people on Skid Row survive and how they got there. And it always comes down to parents, but that's a whole other subject, Wes. But watching these people tell the story and how he's captured it. It's a stool. They're sitting on a stool. He mics them up, and he's got a lovely background. It's usually the identical background for everyone. And when he actually goes to someone's location, he captures it really well as well. How he captures the storytelling of these unfortunate lives is really, really good. He's got millions of subscribers. And interesting guy.
I'll check that out. Yeah. People may have heard me clicking on my keyboard. I was looking it up right when you said it, so cool. I wouldn't forget.
Yeah. That's
because
great.
I forget,
Of course. Are you kidding? I always forget.
trying to keep track of all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm curious about what where am I going to be able to watch Motorcycle Wars? Because you mentioned YouTube, but it sounds like you're exploring a lot of options.
That's it. What you just said. So we've got a lot of options on the table. We've been offered to stream on a certain platform, and that's not only flattering, but it gives us more motivation to get this next event done, which is being set up for the spring. So I'll be promoting from now until spring the next event. And I'm assuming once that catches on, we'll be producing more events. The production, I should mention, Wes, and I wasn't joking earlier about connections in the States. Motorcycle Wars is branded, it's trademarked in North America. And we're hopefully planning to do something in Europe as well. But my main goal is to come down to the States because it's great weather in January in Arizona.
Yes, it is.
I've been in Phoenix a few times. I used to be a second mechanic for an IRL race car team. I did 17 races and I traveled to about a year and a half.
Nice.
And that was a lot of fun.
I know zip about car racing. What's IRL?
The Indy Racing League.
Okay.
So
is
it's
open wheels?
Yes, it's the formula cars, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that was a good time. I was actually developing some of my TV ideas back then, but that's a whole other story. We'll get into it maybe in another podcast. So just to clarify, I am not a TV industry person, and maybe that could be why it's taken a while. I've got a day job, which has funded a lot of the toys, the motorcycles, and this television show, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost the train of thought. What was I going with this, Wes?
I started with asking where we're going to be able to watch Motorcycle Wars.
So it could be a large broadcasting company. It could be like a streaming service. It could be Netflix. There are so many out there. New ones are coming out all the time.
Yeah.
And it could be just simply YouTube. We're getting brand partners now. We're going to be having conversations with them. We're going to feel them out, understand what their needs are. Right now, they're very interested in the interactive event itself, the actual event. So we're funding some of this based on that. Honestly, I used to be afraid of getting distribution. In the last 6 months, I am not concerned about it. I know it's there, and I know we're going to produce interesting content. And whenever it's time, everyone will know where it's going to be. That's for sure. I'll make sure that you understand where it's going to be airing. But I do have a pilot that's been in the can, like closed up and finished for quite a while, and I haven't made it public just yet, just because it's a sensitive thing to do. It's not time-stamped, so if you watch it, you won't see any dates in it.
Right.
So it'll look like it's, you just shot it, right? So I'm anxious. I want Matthew and Emily to allow me to air it, but they're not letting me do that just yet. But we might air it on YouTube. I'm not certain yet. But there's little snippets and things around YouTube, and we're just developing a poster now. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, good.
I love motorcycles. This is not work to me, and let's not underestimate the amount of work that that's involved in this.
Oh, it's a tremendous amount of work. I make really rudimentary videos, on how to fix this on your motorcycle, or, what was broken on this motorcycle or whatever, and, I just did the last one I did, I think, was a 12-minute video where, I got a new helmet. So I did, kind of an overview of the new features, because it's a new model from Schubert and all that.
Okay.
And it probably took me 6 hours to make a 12-minute video.
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
video editing is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
So it takes me a long time.
Yeah. And if you're not doing it routinely 8 hours a day, like it's your vocation,
Yeah.
it's challenging, right? It can be challenging, right?
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of keeping up a foreign language.
Sure.
Because you have to practice that skill. And if you don't do it every day, it degrades without you even knowing it.
That's right.
And you might be able to talk to a 6-year-old, but you can't converse in a boardroom or a pub past the generalities and the niceties and things like that. So but yeah, Final Cut is it has stymied me on more than one occasion. I've gotten the trial version several times. Yeah. And I default back to iMovie because it's super easy. It's like one of those, even kids can use it. But that level of quality is reflected in the end product. I look at them and I know they could be so much better. Yeah. But I also know from my history as a musician, I could listen to a finished album and I can hear things that I would have done different if I was doing it now. Yeah. And it's one of those things that, with the creative process, you're never really finished. You just kind of stop and put it out. Yeah.
Progress over perfection.
Yeah, exactly. You get it. I know you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. And going back to keeping yourself polished, I haven't edited in a few years. So throughout the year as it goes, I force myself, small project, let's get back to Final Cut Pro. The last thing I edited was a really simple, but you still had to get back into it, right? Was a 60-second build of a YZ125. Now, it's over the course of 7 weeks, but I set up a GoPro camera and I took some images and built some film out of that, and it was good just to keep you polished. Yeah. Last summer, I did a little motorcycle wars event between a KX65 and a YZ250. Believe it or not, a father and son. So I set up a little track. It was like a mini version of Motorcycle Wars. We went to a track, and I actually went to a field that created a track out of the field. Nice. And I said, okay, there's going to be practice, then qualifying, and then you two are racing. And there's going to be a negotiation component to it as well. Right. So the 11-year-old's negotiating with a 34-year-old. It was pretty funny. Father and son. It was good. Yeah.
So where on the internet can people go to learn a little bit more about Motorcycle Wars and maybe see some of your clips and keep up with what's going on?
Yep. Yeah. All the news will be there. So motorcyclewars.tv is a URL that we own, as well as motorcyclewarsofficial.com.
Okay.
motorcyclewarsofficial.com. And they can reach me there and reach Emily or Matthew as well. And of course, I'm always open to conversation and comments. One thing, Wes, I need to tell you, the amount of people that I've spoken to, that this thing's evolved from their minds, not only mine, it's mine. My position is to just package what everyone says.
Right.
And yeah, I get to choose what they're saying, but for some reason, I think I have this vision of being able to tell this motorcycle personality story thing. And it just, as you come up with a hurdle, you ask certain people certain things and gold nuggets come out of them. And for some reason, I said, that's what I need that. Yeah. One of those gold nuggets was, I was talking to Donna. She runs the Canada's biggest motorcycle forum. And she goes, it's about storytelling. You're right. But people want to know what the underdog is all about. When people come to a race and they don't know who's winning, they'll always vote for the guy who's in second place, trying to grab that first position.
Yep.
In hockey, if you turn on the channel, you don't know who's playing, you see the score of 4-1, 9 times out of 10, you're going to vote for the guys who have got one goal.
Absolutely.
It's human nature. So the first poster, I think the first poster or the first event is going to be called the Underdog Pressure Test.
Cool.
That's the story.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing that and the rest of Motorcycle Wars. And Jerry, I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks, Wes.
Your enthusiasm for the program and for motorcycles is very clear in the conversation. So I really appreciate that excitement that you brought to the conversation.
Thank you, Wes. Those are kind words. Thank you very much.
Visit our website at chasingthehorizon.us to listen to every episode of the podcast and read up on various motorcycle-related topics. The best way you can support Chasing the Horizon is by joining the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Yes, it says BMW right in the name, but we absolutely do not care what bike you ride. We know what's most important. The MOA is all about the community of riders, not a single brand. You can join as a digital member for $39 a year or as a traditional member for $49 a year. The biggest difference there is digital members don't get a hard copy of our monthly magazine in their mailbox. They access the BMW Owners News online. Each membership supports digital offerings like Chasing the Horizon, the Ride Inside with Mark Barnes, and everything else the MOA does. Find out more at bmwmoa.org. And ride along with us on the internet. Chasing the Horizon is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There's a mailing list with exclusive content and giveaways that are only open to subscribers. You can sign up for that at tinyletter.com/chasingthehorizon. We'll see you out there somewhere on the road or off it. Ride safe.